You are a cultural pioneer, or as I'd like to say, a culture-neer. You're daring to go where others aren't willing to go. The unknown doesn't scare you, it intrigues you. You're not satisfied with the status quo. Business as usual is not in your DNA. You're done with doing the same thing and expecting a different result. You're an explorer at heart and a trendsetter by nature. You were born with purpose, called to lead, destined to make a difference. You are a Culture-Neer.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Culture-Neer podcast. I'm your host, Terry Gwaltney. Today, we're going to continue our series on how to select your team. How we're going to select that winning team. That's probably the most important part. Last week, we kind of laid the groundwork for the importance of that and viewing who we put on our team more as an investment, a worthy investment of our time, to where we're not just looking for people for a job, but we're selecting people for a career. Moving away from a hiring process that tends to be reactionary to a proactive process that has a whole lot more to do with selecting the exact candidates that you want representing your brand, your reputation, and your name, which you've worked so hard to create to this point if you're having any kind of success in business. So this is going to be a multi-part series. This will be number 2. But before we get too deep in today, I also want to remind you, we have some resources that could probably really help. If you go to terrygwaltney.com, one of the first things that will pop up on that website is a culture assessment. It's free. You can sign up, put your email in there. It's going to send you some questions on how to do an evaluation of your own culture, but then turn around and you take that same form, circulate it amongst some of your team members, and compare their assessment of your culture with yours. I promise you it's probably going to be eye-opening. Also, we now are putting out daily tips from our culture playbook that really are designed to kind of help you build your culture, build that servant leadership style, select your team, and all the things that we talk about here on the show. So anyway, hopefully that's a benefit to you. We did that to add some extra value. Now let's jump into our topic of the day. When it comes to running a business, the most important decision a leader makes is not the budget decision, and we know that's important. It's not even the strategic, vision for the company. Super important, obviously, where we're going. But really, if you boil it all down, the most important decisions that we're going to make in our organizations and our businesses, they're always going to be people decisions. And so whether you're building a new company, you have an idea of starting an organization, or you find yourself managing maybe a group of people that you inherited from a predecessor, maybe through acquisition, you bought some companies and with them you got some good people, but now you need to get them on the same boat, rowing in the same direction, and integrate them into your culture. The benefit of what we're talking about today, I think, will help you immensely. But you first need to understand that is the most important part of the decisions that I'm going to make as a leader in my organization. If you can establish that in your mind, then what happens is your perspective begins to change, and it's a mind shift. And probably that's one of the most important things. If the perspective changes, then what you do begins to change. Because as we say often, how I view things determines how I do things. And so if you look at these people and these decisions being the most important, then I think you'll also begin to look at your calendar, and you'll begin to make room for the things in your organization that really demand your time. And we realize this is not a time management episode, but everything that we say yes to automatically means we're saying no to something else in the future. So I need a filter of the things that are the most important, so I'm pouring my time into the areas that are of the utmost importance to my organization and the overall vision and where we're trying to end up as a company. This is one of them. So having said that, when you change that perspective, it begins to change then the amount of investment I'm willing to make financially into my people and of my personal time in this entire process. So I'm hoping as we go through this, I'm giving you highlights of these different areas through the selection process to begin to go back and look at your own and begin to build your process that matches your vision, your organization, and your core values, ultimately to end up at that level of success that you desire to be at. I'm going to read this quote from Jim Collins. He's very well respected. One of the books that he wrote that is legendary in any kind of managerial organizational studies is the Good to Great book. Listen to this. He said, if I were running a company today, I would have one priority above all others: to acquire as many of the best people as I could, because the singular biggest constraint on the success of my organization is the ability to get and hang on to enough of the right people. That is a powerful quote. And it resonates through every industry that is probably listening today. I firmly believe that years ago, the biggest budgets that we had and the biggest battles and a lot of our strategy plans were, how do we get in front of more of our customers and attract them? And obviously you can't have a business without having customers, so utterly important. But I believe the new playground and the new battleground for businesses that are going to be uber successful is those that are winning the battle in recruiting the right people. Too many options are out in the world today. Too many people in this generation will trade in the period of time they have at their organization to very quickly move to something that appears to be better, that maybe more aligns to their values, to a culture that is more endearing to them, maybe to more flexibility. It's not like, the boomer generation that was very typical to go get in one or two jobs and spend their entire career there. And so it's a different mindset. And so what we're talking about is super important also to be able to keep your competitive advantage. The Great Recession taught us something in 2008, but I think the Great Resignation, that happened during COVID taught us something as well. And people become accustomed to a variety of different things that introduce new habits into the workplace that we as managers, owners, entrepreneurs have to take in mind and consideration as we're building the culture and the kind of environment we want to attract, kind of the people that we want. And so let's back this up a little bit. I think one of the first things as you listened to last week and you figured out the importance of hiring that ambassador, you need to figure out what is that person going to do that you need to add to that team. And I think that really starts with, how are you casting the vision and putting the right language around the opportunity that you're providing for people that want to join your company? Again, if this is more than a job, I want to be a part of something that has an experience that lines up to what I'm looking for. And so I think you need to think through the verbiage on that. I'm going to give you just a practical example of one of the organizations that I run, and this is one of the things that actually is on our website. So let me read this. And I want you to put yourself in the mind of someone that is looking for a job. Maybe you're in the home improvement space. You're a tradesman or you're a salesman or you work in an office and you're looking through hundreds of different opportunities that are being posted on places, like Indeed. Would this capture your attention? Would this cause this to stand out a little bit differently than someplace else? A great life begins with a great company. At Integrity, we believe that the true measure of success goes beyond providing top-notch home improvement solutions. It's about making a lasting impact on our community and the world around us. We're looking for passionate individuals who share our core values of integrity, respect, trust, to join our growing team. If you're ready to be a part of something bigger, more than just a job, we invite you to explore a career at Integrity Roofing and Exteriors. Here, you'll not only grow professionally, but also contribute to a mission-driven company that values leadership, giving, and gratitude. Work at Integrity, and we'll help you find a path to greatness. Now, if you noticed when you heard that, those words, that language was very intentional. Many of the people that are out there looking to make career changes today, obviously they need to make good money, and that's important to them. But statistic and study after study will show us it is not the most important thing. Matter of fact, one of the most important things is that they're looking for a culture that they can envision themselves working in every day, where they enjoy going to work and doing what they do day in and day out with the people that they're working with. They want to know that there is a career path to wherever they're going. So they're not signing up for a job. They are looking for a career that has mobility and opportunity, which is why you need to be thinking about career and not just job. One of the number one things the people out there that are looking for that you're looking to add to your team, they're looking for, if I'm going to trade my time, a portion of my life that I will never get back, which is more important to me than money, I want to know I'm making a difference. So how are you communicating coming to work for you when you're recruiting amongst all these opportunities that are out there, that you're going to provide them an opportunity to make a difference with what they're doing. Some jobs, that's a whole lot easier. If I was going to go to work for, a company, that provided food or health care to people that were struggling or dying or desperately needed it. I mean, obviously, it would be very easy to communicate that message. How do you communicate that message if you're looking for a service technician that is going to work on air conditioners all day? How do you communicate that message if you're trying to hire somebody that's a craftsman that's going to build houses all day? How do you do that if you own a mom and pop restaurant and you're looking for servers? Because there's a way to attach the purpose and what you're about as an organization that becomes attractive to the people that are working for you. And it needs to be more than just about the tasks that you're hiring them to do. And so that begins with your language. So I would encourage you to think through your language, and the language not just about the position. Make it about the company. And if you say, well, there's nothing aspiring about what we do, there's nothing that we really do that impacts the community that we live in, there's nothing that we do that really impacts the world in any kind of way that I would be proud of, maybe that's where you need to start. Maybe you need to go back and revisit, what are you doing with your company and your influence? Is it all about just trading product for money? What are you doing with all the money? What are you doing with the goodwill and the influence that you're gathering in the community as you lead people, as you interact with vendors? Maybe you need to think beyond business profit to maybe some more about business with purpose, because that's what will resonate with the kind of people that you need on your team. You don't build an extraordinary company with ordinary people. You build an extraordinary company with extraordinary people. And so you can't have an ordinary message that's going to, attract an extraordinary person. And so this is where it starts. And so once you begin to do that, then begin to envision, what does that job description look like for that person? Lay out a day in the life. Be as specific as you can. But again, I would encourage you to lead with vision. And you can't do this, if you don't have one. If you don't have a vision of what they could become. Because I believe, again, perspective changes things. I know people listening today could say, well, if I had 30 people, it would be easy for me to be able to offer this mobility and this career path that I could attract people that, they could go and do greater things. But I'm a person, an organization, I have 2 people, so that doesn't really apply to me. I would beg to differ. I think, it all begins to hinge on how you're viewing the opportunity. So yes, if you had 30 people, there's probably more positions, to be able to navigate people to. But if I'm a person of 3 and I have a vision to grow my company, again, I want to recruit from vision. Instead of talking about an established company with, 30 to 40 people, I'm going to talk about how we're a startup company that has a vision to change our industry. And if you want to get in on a ground floor opportunity, we need people like you that are willing to, move around, willing to roll up their sleeves, get involved in something, that has the opportunity to change, our city, our community. In other words, your perspective changes, it impacts your vision, which then affects your language, which gives you the ability to draw the kind of people that see things the way you see them. Now, one of the things that we did, and I think it was key for us, is we began to put out there a filter almost for the people that were going to apply for the positions that we had open. And so we began to look for ways to list our vision statement, where we were headed, what was important to us. List our mission statement, how we do business and what was important, again, to us. And then we look for ways to also include within that ad our core values. These are the things that we're going to process through to make decisions. And we did that intentionally. And then we would use language like, hey, we live by these rules, play by these things each and every day. If you don't bother applying. Now, that's pretty kind of up in your face. But again, we select 1 out of 100 people that we talk to. And so if we're only selecting 1 out of 100 we talk to, I don't really have time to talk to 500 people. And so that kind of becomes a filter. So what happens is people will read through your mission, your vision, your core values, like, that doesn't sound like me, something I align with, or something that's important. The idea is they never apply. those that do, there's something in that vision that it resonates with them. There's something in that mission statement on how you do business that's attractive to them. There's something in those core values that says that lines up with who I am. I want to work for a place that has integrity, that values generosity, that treats people with dignity, honor, and respect. That's the kind of place I think I've been looking for. And what will happen is if you do a good job at this, you'll find people are more attracted to the environment that you offer versus the position that is open. I was in a great interview just yesterday, and I'm having this conversation. We're going through our interview questions. There's two questions that are very similar that I always use. One of them is, why are you interested in this particular position? And you name the position, and then it'll tell you. The second one is, now, out of all the companies out there that have open positions, why are you interested in working here? And I got a very common answer to a common question that I asked just yesterday. And this is really, he said, it's less about the position, even though I have some similar experience, but he said, it's more about the company. He said, I see what the company does when they're giving away turkeys, and I see on their social media. I see what they do when they're involved, in a food distribution. We just give away 46,000 pounds of food to 10 different organizations across 3 different states, all the areas that we serve, to give back, to go help other people. And sometimes people wonder, I think, as business owners, like, what does that have to do with business? Well, one, it's the right thing to do. We've been blessed, so let's go be a blessing. Let's take some of the rewards and become generous with that and make our communities better. Byproduct of that, though, is people like this gentleman who's seen that, and he said, that I want to be a part of a company that's like that. As a matter of fact, I also then in turn called your company to come out where I work to give us an estimate. And he said the level of professionalism that they had blew me away, because I don't see that in our industry. So these things become important. He said, really, at the end of all that, he said, all of my interactions, I've never talked to someone that worked at this company that had anything bad to say about it. And he said, it's more about the company that I want to work for than it is the position that happens to be open. My point, guys, is that if you'll build that kind of company, people that are looking, the people you want, will begin to look for you. And over a period of time, you will develop a reputation of being the place that they're looking for, which shifts the whole dynamic. Instead of us spending time, how do we find the kind of people that we need to fill these positions? Now, the question is, that's the checkers game. The chess game is, how do you build a place that the kind of people that you need want to work at? And then it makes everything else that you're doing so much easier. Listen, I can have the best language, the best imagery, to be able to try to recruit the kind of people that I want. But if my culture doesn't back up what I'm promoting, as soon as they run into our own people, that process will end right there. You will have a retention problem because you won't be able to live up to the reputation that you've projected. So you have to live these things out. But practically, I'm assuming that you're doing that, that this is how you begin to build that. So use the language, cast the vision about the opportunity, wherever it is you're at, whatever size company you have, it doesn't matter. Then begin to build out the description and the roles of what that would look like for that particular position. People want to know what they're making a commitment to. So begin to lay that out. We tell people up front, so we have a mantra. We're a leadership development company that just happens to provide a home improvement solution. So I'm not saying that you need to come up with a bunch of canned, catchy slogans, but you need to come up with something that's memorable. But whatever you come up with needs to be a part of who you really are, not just something you think that is attractive to the people you're trying to attract. So for us, we really believe that. So our interview process has very intentional questions that are trying to find people and set the proper expectations that if you come here, this is more than an 8-to-4 job. That we're looking for people that believe in themselves as much as we believe in them. In other words, we're going to provide you books for personal development that may not have very much to do with the tasks that we've hired you to do, but we're willing to buy the book and invest in you if you're willing to invest the time. But the expectation is, especially during your training, you're going to read one of those every 2 weeks or listen to it. Wow, that's pretty upfront with a lot of expectation and a high bar. Yeah, because we're not looking for an ordinary team member. We're looking for an extraordinary team member. And because when you're recruiting, you need to be recruiting to where you're going. So you have an opening right now. What happens if the department you have an opening in actually grows the way you want it to grow 5 times? Is that person going to be able to grow into being a supervisor? And 5 years from now, take their experience to lead 4 other people in that department? You need to be thinking about that. So your interview process needs to be finding people that are willing to grow with you. If they don't grow with you, unfortunately, they can't go with you. And so that becomes a mindset. And your interview questions can begin to dig into, are they already doing that? Or if they're not doing that, are they open to that? And you listen between the lines to begin to understand what kind of candidate you're really getting as you go through this process. So you need to really define what the role is. I'd encourage you to build a profile for the person that you're hiring. What does that ideal person look like? You ever went to Starbucks and you go through the drive-through and realize really quick, well, that is a morning person. Well, think about it. Do you not sell more coffee probably in the morning? And you've got this person that it seems like they've been up for 8 hours and they're just happy about life. And then you go through and you realize, why did they hire that person? That person doesn't even like people, and they're for sure not a morning person, and they got them working at 6 o'clock in the morning at a coffee shop at a drive-through. Nobody thought through that. You need to build a profile for the ideal candidate for the position that positions them to win and plays to their strength, as well as one that you're able to put in there that leverages your opportunity. Think about who's answering your phone. Some people are great in person and they're horrible on the phone. Some people are horrible and intimidated in person, but they're great over the phone. Your interview selection process should be looking for those things that will cause that person to excel and give you a competitive advantage in the position that you're putting them in. And you can't do that by reading somebody's resume, doing a 20-minute interview and say, we're just going to try this. That is not a strategy for long-term success in your company. So build the profile. What type of personality they need to be. If you do not use personality profiles, assessments, you need to stop. You need to go find a place to do that right now. You need to find out what kind of personality best fits in the position you have open, and you need to understand, what does that mean? If I told you, you need a person that has a choleric personality or a high D personality, and you don't know how to read that, that is useless to you. But when you do, that becomes a super valuable tool to begin to try to do the process of elimination and begin to match up people with their strengths in order so they can excel, in their career path and be happy at what they're doing, as well as you can advance what you're trying to do in your organization and begin to grow. When you grow, it obviously affects your bottom line. It brings you more job security, and it presents the people that are going with you on that trip to try to achieve that vision a whole lot more opportunities. It's a win-win for everybody, but you have to put the time in. My point is just like you can't microwave leadership, you can't microwave this process. If you take shortcuts here, inevitably, you're going to pay the price somewhere down the road. Back to where we started. If this is the most important decision you're going to make in your business, you need to treat it like that. You need to devote the time, the money, the attention, and the resources to that to make sure on the front end you're building the best possible team. I'm going to give you a couple of interview questions before we get out of here today. These are kind of generic ones that maybe you could use throughout your process, but here's what I would say. The resumes you get for the most part are probably useless. I would dare say all the references you're going to get are totally useless. If you're remotely attracting people that are competent, they're not going to put somebody down as a reference that's going to say anything about them in a negative light. So it's like watching their social media. Do they really put all the dumb things they do on there? No, they put the highlight reel of, I wish I had that guy's life. I wish I had her life. In reality, it may not be the life you want at all, but the only part of their life is the part they're willing to show you. You need to view a resume, it's the same way. So you're going to want to dig deep. You're going to want to talk to the right people. You're going to want to make sure you're talking to supervisors, not just friends and neighbors and acquaintances and coworkers. You're going to want to dig deep in that if you're going to take the time to actually go do references. But the questions you ask actually dig in to get you to begin to understand the story of the person that you're about to hire. And the longer you do this, I think the more astute you are about this process, and you can begin to fill in the gaps. It's usually not about the questions you're asking. It's the question beyond the question. And so these questions are not really going to be important to you if you don't understand the why of why you're asking them. So, common question that we'll ask on the first interview. Talk to me about the 3 best moments in the period of your life that were high school, like from 14 to 18. Now, that question can be about literally while they were in school, from 8 to 3, but it's more about that season of their life, which was so formative and had so much influence about who they were becoming as an adult and who they were going to become as a future employee of yours. And I'm always listening for, depending on the position. If I find a person, that, their highlight was, I played sports and, I want to dig deeper. Were you any good? Were you on a winning team? What kind of position did you have on the team? Were they a captain of a team? Did they exhibit leadership qualities then? Did they have influence? What did they like most about being on a team? That's going to tell you a whole lot about how they're going to work with other people. Did they get kicked off the team? What did they do to make the team? How competitive was that? All that's valuable. If I find out that somebody, was raised by a single mom during this period of time, they lost their dad during that period of time, that's a formative time. There's affirmation. If I find out later, and I start putting the dots together and they were a very high achiever in athletics and, continue to be promoted on their job, there's certain drivers that are behind that they're probably looking for internally. And I know that those are going to be great traits if I'm putting them in a role of being a salesman. They're competitive. One of the things that we'll ask people is, tell me what motivates you the most. If I give you 3 areas, all 3 of which motivate all of us to some degree, but which one motivates you the most? Would it be recognition? Would it be compensation? Recognition, compensation, competition. That's your 3rd one. The answer to that, though, is very telling. If I put them in an environment where they're going to compete against somebody else, is that going to bring the best out of them? Is it, show me the money and I will reach for the moon? Or is it really, man, I need to be the guy that's hearing, I did a great job. And I may motivate that guy more by praising him publicly and giving him a plaque at the end of the year, than just giving him $5,000 bonus and trying to figure out, how can we motivate him to get the full potential out of him? But the answer to that, that's super important, because how he answers that gives me insight into what his makeup is and how he's wired. I go back to the question that I started with. I follow up, the 3 highlights, of your high school time by what was the 3 worst moments? Man, it's very telling if I can hear stories of, I got kicked out of school and then I come back. I was at a hard place in my life, but I got in with the wrong crowd, but I turned that around. How'd you turn that around? What was the motivating factor for you to realize I don't want to go down that road? I lost my dad during that period of time. I lost my best friend. My parents got divorced. You dig into that a little bit deeper. Why? Because a person's history is the best indicator of their future. And so it gives you insight to what has made that person up to this point. What has influenced that person up to this point? Now, how can I take that and begin to shape that person in this role and see them flourish in this environment? You see, potential is not so much what you are, it's what you can become. I told you we had a mantra that we're a leadership development company. Well, it's more than a catchy statement. If I can find someone that has a willingness to learn and a commitment to be a lifetime learner, and I believe that potential is what they can become, and I can put them in an environment that is devoted to developing them as a leader, I don't have to hire leaders. Matter of fact, if you hire a leader, you're also going to hire all their bad habits. I can create a whole lot more loyalty by finding someone with potential, believing in them, pulling out of them what was already in there but they couldn't see. See, real leaders, I think, see what others only look at. And that becomes the difference between an ordinary organization and an extraordinary organization. And the biggest differentiator between the two is I don't hire ordinary people. I select extraordinary people. So, well, yeah, that's what I want to do. Well, what do they look like? What does the place look like they want to work at? How do I find out if they're extraordinary? Well, some of this goes through the questions. And I'm going to have to land this today because I could spend hours on this. But I'm going to give you a couple of questions just to think about as you kind of craft through this.
Hey guys, if this subject was that we went over today was helpful to you, selecting your team, I want to invite you to the Ripple Effect. The Ripple Effect experience is going to be on February 21st and 22nd at Mountain Dew Park in Marion, Illinois. This actually happens to be one of the topics that we're going to talk about because we realize selecting your team, hiring, recruiting, figuring out who needs to be promoted to a customer in your organization if you can't coach them up is a challenge that many organizations are facing today. So I just want to encourage you, get your ticket today. You can go on Brushfire, go to terrygwaltney.com, look in the notes on the show. There'll be a link in there. This will be an event that will not only help you, but some of your mid-level managers. And if you just have aspiring leaders within your organization, they're going to become better because they participated in this event. We'll see you at the Ripple Effect.
So when you're going through these interview questions, if servant leadership and servant mentality is important to you for the type of team you're selecting, maybe you use some questions like this. What do you find most rewarding in serving others? See, it's not a yes or no question. It's also not a question that they were prepared for. And when you're asked this question, well, what's the why behind that? Well, this is intended to help you understand the heart of the candidate and whether or not he or she truly has a heart of service. So it's not about just assembling the right questions. You, as the person that's in the selection process, need to know, why am I asking those questions? What is it that I'm trying to learn? What piece of the puzzle am I trying to put together to find that extraordinary candidate? Maybe the question is, what do you find most challenging about serving others? Insightful. In other words, does the candidate understand challenges that are associated with serving others? Do they speak negatively about serving? All of that, super valuable to you as you're going through the interview process. Maybe it's something like, what are the most encouraging words anyone has ever said to you? Wow. You're starting to get into what really causes this person to tick, what their love language is, how you motivate that person. We know if you've been married very long, and if you haven't, I encourage you to buy this book, even if you have. 5 Love Languages, Gary Chapman. The principles of that book teach you how to interact with customers, colleagues, your spouse, your children, because everybody has a love language. And it simply boiled down to, what is it that really means something to me? We find ourselves communicating to other people in our love language. But the problem is, if that's not theirs, they don't get it. And so we have the expectation of, well, I just did this for you, and you act like it didn't even matter. And and it's not their love language. So it really didn't matter to them. It didn't register. And you have the expectation of, like, you didn't respond the way I expected you to. They have the expectation is, I don't know why you don't ever, treat me like I'm valued. And you're both frustrated, but you're speaking 2 different languages. So some of this allows you to cue in to what motivates that person. Think about this with me for a minute. If your leadership style is the exact same thing with every person that is on your team, you're going to fail. If you have more than one child, do you not realize that each one of them has a different personality? So how you correct one, discipline one, motivate one, probably not exactly the same as the other one. Or think about your brothers, your siblings. Think about when you're communicating with your parents. One's probably slightly different than the other. Growing up, there's probably certain things you went to your mom about. There's probably other things you went to your dad about. Why? You went to them based on which one you thought would most likely agree with you and the decision that you wanted and the outcome that was favorable to you. And so when leading people, it's the exact same approach. So the more you become a student of the people that you're selecting and then the people you're leading, the more successful you're going to be. Communication is not about what you say, it's how you say it in a way that the other person understands what you're saying. That's how you get the message across. I'll give you one more and we'll wind this up today. Tell me about a time that you made a serious mistake. Maybe that's a serious mistake at work. How did you know you had failed? Follow-up question. If no one else knew, then who did you choose to tell and why? Here's what you're looking for. Is this candidate willing to admit mistakes? And are they able to learn from their failure? I can tell you one time I asked this question. I ask a similar question. Here's the actual question I ask every time. Tell me about one weakness in your life that you wanted to improve. I had this guy, he hem-hawed around, and then he said, and he was a middle-aged gentleman. He said, you know what? He said, I don't really have any weaknesses. I was flabbergasted. I come back and I said, I've asked this question a lot. And I said, I know you're trying to think through. I promise you have a weakness. I said, what I found, I either have people that are liars or they're clueless. Which one are you? He said it for a minute. He said, honestly, no. He said, I really don't have any weaknesses. It didn't matter. He was either lying to me or he was so clueless, I knew he wasn't going to be a good fit. And we ended the interview there. My point is, what are you looking for? Someone that's willing to admit they have a weakness. Someone that knows what that weakness is. If they're aware of it, at least they can be working on it. If they're aware of it, they're open to you helping them work on it. If they're not, more than likely it's just that they're not aware of it, is they probably have an arrogance problem or a pride problem. Either one, they're going to be challenges for you. So your questions, giving you insight to the type of people you're selecting, are a whole lot deeper. You're trying to extract. If you want to build that extraordinary team, then simply tell me about the experience you have in this particular position. Again, when you're going through the interview process, I encourage you to look for these three things, and these should be your highlights. Character. Do you trust this person to represent your company, your brand, your reputation, which is an extension of you? Number one, hands down. Number two, are they a cultural fit? If I hired this person, are they going to make my team better? Are they going to add something that we don't have? Or are they going to bring something we already have and make it greater? Or this person's talented, but they're going to be poisonous to our culture. They're going to be toxic. They run the risk of being overly negative. You need to answer those two questions. Third one is, are they competent? In other words, if you believe in your process, your system, and your people, you just need to know that this is a competent person. I think this person is trainable. This person's teachable. Probably if this person tells you he has no weakness and you give him a second chance at it and he still says he has no weakness, probably not real teachable. I would put him in the incompetent stage. That would check him off the list. Anyway, again, we could spend hours on this, but guys, let me tell you, there is nothing more important than the kind of people that you select. We'll pick this up again the next time we're together. Try to take it deeper. Again, I encourage you, pick up the book, The Culture-Neer, if you don't have it. We have a chapter devoted to this on there. A lot of other stuff that we just don't have time to get into today. You need to become a student of this process. You need to become a student of the people you're trying to select. And if you do that, you're going to change your business. You're going to give yourself a competitive advantage. Remember, guys, the culture is only as healthy as the leader. We'll see you next time on the Culture-Neer podcast.
Terry Gwaltney from the Culture-Neer podcast. Listen, I want to say thank you for listening to the podcast today. I also want to encourage you to help us get the message out to more people. If you could like, share, and review this content on wherever you consume it, if you go to YouTube or LinkedIn or just whatever your social media channels are, and you could even share it, that would be a big help to us here at the Culture-Neer podcast. Also, if you'd like some more information, you can go to www.terrygwaltney.com, where we have updates. We also have more resources. We share articles there. And you also can find our new book there called The Culture-Neer. Again, we want to thank you again for taking time just to listen to the podcast or view it on YouTube. It's our goal to spend 20 or 30 minutes each time we're together to help grow your culture to a point where your employees refuse to leave and your customers can't resist. This is Terry. We'll talk to you soon.